Normally I'd have a very slick, overly produced intro into Free Speech Fridays, but a little bit different because I'm going to announce today, and I've mentioned it maybe in passing earlier in the week, we have a new sponsor for Free Speech Fridays. Free Speech Fridays now brought to you in association with the Free Speech Union. And the Free Speech Union, in case you didn't know, is New Zealand's leading free speech advocacy organisation. They get involved in public and media debates on free speech. They've got outreach into universities and many organisations. They talk to political parties. They talk to government. And their sole purpose, it would seem to me, in life is to protect your right to say what you believe and think and to exercise your rights to free speech. They therefore are the only real partner that we can have for Free Speech Fridays. Do visit the Free Speech Union. Simply type in Free Speech Union New Zealand into Google or any search engine and you'll find them and the excellent work they do. All right, so for the first sponsored episode of Free Speach Fridays, we're joined by two, I think, excellent guests from the Centre for Political Research. Muriel Newman, former MP, joins us. Muriel, how are you?
Oh, very good. Thank you, Sean.
Isn't the FSU a great sponsor for us?
Absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
Well done on sorting that out.
I think so too. And also with us, a Free Speech Friday regular, Auckland City Councillor, former Cabinet Minister, Maurice Williamson. How are you, Maurice?
Good morning, Sean.
All right. I want to kick things off. We had some success at the platform this week. A story we'd actually run months ago, but then Gary Judd, KC, an eminent lawyer, lodges a complaint with the Regulations Review Committee at Parliament about a new requirement from next year that all people studying law in New Zealand, no matter what university they're at, will have to do a number of courses in tikanga Māori. That is going to become a compulsory part of a law degree. And Gary Judd says this is ridiculous. First up, Muriel Newman, do you think it is ridiculous or is there some logic to this?
No, it is totally ridiculous. Look, the point is that tikanga is Maori custom. It's not law. Gary Judd makes that point. It's actually cultural indoctrination if you try and put it into an academic program. And to try and pretend it's law is ridiculous. And look, Sean, there is a very good example that's alive right now that shows us how bad it will be if tikanga becomes accepted in the law. And it's the Marine and Coastal Area Act, which National brought in, which National said would end up with just a few parts of the coast and remote areas being claimed successfully by Maori and having customary marine title. And what's happened is because they put tikanga into the law and it was interpreted by the judges as being the most important factor. Forget about the property rights issues in there, but it's most important, and now the whole coast is going to end up being controlled by Maori with customary marine title unless something is changed. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. Maurice, this could be, obviously the accusation levelled against Gary Judd and others, and we'll talk about Kylie Quinn's calling him a racist later, is that this is no big deal. It's just, you've got to be a little bit empathetic and know a bit about Maori culture. Do you think it is deeper than that and more concerning than that?
I think the most concerning thing is, and I've been on the sharp end of it, is if you ever say that what I use the phrase that all New Zealanders should have the same rights and privileges, Article 3 of the treaty guaranteed it. The moment you say that now, that we should all have the same, you're a racist. And they use the tag straight away. Now, I always thought the definition of racism was where you treated a race differently to another based on their race. And I think that's wrong, and I was opposed to apartheid in South Africa and opposed to, what went on in the United States in the 1960s where black people couldn't use the same toilets or buses. But somehow now it's done a 180-degree flip, and you're a racist if you want everybody to have the same rights and privileges. And I just think it's gone way too far, and it's insanity. If there is anything where Maori are being shortchanged or shut out of any public policy, then that should be corrected and fixed, because Maori have every right to participate in our society along with everybody else. But that is racism, I'm told, by a number of people.
All right, Maurice. Jane Kelsey came out, I think, Wednesday when the Herald followed our story, and she said this is all about moving towards a titiriti-based system of justice, or incorporating titiriti into our justice system. I just would observe no one asked me if we were going to do that, or the rest of New Zealand, did they?
Correct.
Yeah.
And I get that at council now. We've got people coming along to do something about the Auckland Council, and they say it's under our treaty obligations, or they do use I don't know how to phrase it the way, titiriti or whatever.
Titiriti, mate.
Or whatever. They keep saying
it's
that.
It's like tea tree with a T on the end. Tree.
Got it. Okay.
Tree.
I'll practice it. And I keep thinking, now, hang on, wasn't the treaty between the Crown and Maori, and the obligations were for the Crown? So if the Crown has got obligations, then they should be doing them. But I don't know anyone that sat around the table in Waitangi in 1840 and said, oh, by the way, when you're laying some new paving for the Auckland motorway or some infrastructure bridge over it or something, you need to worry about the treaty.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Maurice. And Muriel, I made this point, I think, on social media a week or two back. Otago University's new branding and everything to reflect its treaty obligations. Well, the University of Otago didn't sign the Treaty of Waitangi,
correct,
and it has no obligations, Muriel.
Well, that's right. And what's happened, Sean, it's very interesting. I've been looking into it this week. What happened was that in about 2021, ministers in the Labour government sent out letters of expectation to everyone in the education sector. That's from early childhood right up to tertiary. And they actually wanted them to impose this radicalised treaty agenda into every educational institution. And they went to the Tertiary Education Commission and they said, you've got to make sure the universities do this. And so what's happened now is that as a result of the pressure they were put on to put the treaty agenda is first in education, all of these organisations, these institutions have sort of bent over backwards to go further, so they can't be accused of lagging. If you know what I mean. And
also because they're all craven ladder climbing bureaucrats. But that's really interesting. I didn't know about the letter, but we can presume then that thing that went to people also, like the real estate authority, who then came up with this crazy compulsory thing. All right, so that explains at least part of where this come from. We need a government, therefore, Muriel and Maurice, that rescinds that letter, that withdraws that instruction.
I think it needs to go further.
Yeah. Okay, no, well, Maurice...
the Janet Dixon example you gave, the lady who did the real estate pushback, and she lives here in my electorate, and she did the absolute right thing and said, she's selling to mainly Asian and sometimes a few Pākehā. The issue of her selling to Maori isn't even an issue. Now, if you were a real estate agent in, say, Ngarawahia, it may be something that's important for you to be doing. Sure, let me give you one extra one. I've just seen the design for the big kiosks that are going to be rolled out for the tag on, tag off Auckland transport trains and buses. And the big sign stands like as high as a parking metre with a big screen on the top. And the words in huge letters are Pākakinga/Heka-inga. And when you look down underneath it, almost in faded white, you can't really read it, but in little letters, really little letters, it says tag on, tag off. So we're now being told there was a Maori word for tag on and tag off for electronic cards back when colonisation...
Oh, you may not realise Maori had a very sophisticated parking payment system before Cook arrived and destroyed it.
But that's where my ignorance knows no bounds.
Yeah.
We've gone way too far, Sean, and I tell you what...
Well, okay, and I guess what we need to have is a debate on the principles of the treaty and how we integrate it into 21st century life in New Zealand, right, Muriel? That's actually what we need.
Yes, we
Well,
do.
we do need to have the debate, but I say, having sort of thought about where the hang all this is heading, which is down rabbit holes all over the place, as Maurice has just explained, I think that, really they're going to have to take the whole blinking lot out of the Public Service Act. I think if you go back to the core legislation that sets up the whole government sector and you take race out of it and you take the treaty out of it, that's going to be the only way they're going to get on top of this because it's gone so far.
All right. And I tend to agree. Well, let's move. And I don't want to personally demonise or lionise anyone. Kylie Quince is the Dean of Law at AUT. And in response to Gary Judd, and when he finally got some story coverage after the platform got into it, in response to Gary Judd, or on social media, she said, he was a racist old dinosaur and that he could go and die in a corner. And this is from, and she hasn't got a practicing certificate, this is from the Dean of a law school at a major tertiary institute in New Zealand. What we have had back from AUT is that they're looking at it. We've had no retraction from Ms. Quince. Maurice, is that acceptable for someone in that position to say that?
No, of course it's not. But as I started the program with it, it's the standard way now to try and silence anybody. If you raise something, you say, oh, look, I'm concerned about the length of the lawns in the park and we're not mowing them enough, you're a racist. You go, sorry? It's now the tag you use when you want to shut people down. And it is disgusting. And for somebody to hold a position like that and resort to that sort of rhetoric, instead of using, what she's supposed to be, an academic with an incredibly good brain, and say, well, why Mr. Judd is wrong is, and lay out why under the law he's made a mistake or he's got it wrong, and debate it on that, so great. And then you can say, well, I'm not sure which one I agree with. But what you do is you get into the, let's drive them back into their houses and lock up the bloody doors because we'll tarnish them with a tag of they're a racist.
We've had no government response to that. And someone asked me the other day, Muriel, they said, how can people in those positions get away with behaving and saying things like that? And I say, because they do. Mainstream media don't call them out. And everyone looks the other way, Muriel.
It's a shocking situation. You would expect the institution to sanction her because it does cross a line. We're all in favour of free speech, right, and free expression and all the rest of it. But there is a line, and we all know where that line is, and she crossed it. And the institution should be sanctioning her. She should have to retract such expressions. She is a leader in our community. What sort of a show is she giving to all the young people coming on? I mean, it is totally unacceptable, and it's just another symptom of the radicalisation of the institutions that has gone on. And it was probably always happening, to be fair, but it's just gone on overdrive over the last 6 years in particular.
Yeah, I would agree. Guys, we're going to move to another topic and we're going to have a break right now. Things are going very well. A reminder, you're listening to Free Speech Fridays on the platform, brought to you in association with Free Speech Unions, the champions of free speech and freedom in New Zealand. Do join the union. Visit them at fsu.nz. And you're with Free Speech Fridays, brought to you in association with Free Speech Union, the champions of free speech in New Zealand. Visit them at fsu.nz. Our guest today, Muriel Newman from the Centre for Political Research and Auckland Councillor, former Cabinet Minister in a national government, Maurice Williamson. Guys, much said about parliamentary behaviour today and whether or not people have been acting. And I just want to ask you guys, and I know this wasn't on the topic list, does Julianne Genter scare you, Maurice?
No, the principle of what went on scares me, because I tell you, if a bloke had gone across the house and done that to somebody else, be it a woman or a bloke, there would have been a hue and cry, got to be kicked out of Parliament, gone today, it's all over. But because she did it, oh, look, she's an emotional person who likes to express herself quite strongly. come on, guys. You're going to have one set of rules, not one set of... And the Greens have this fabulous ability to go missing. When Golri's got into trouble, she happened to just be overseas. They wouldn't say where, they wouldn't say why, they wouldn't even say when she was returning. She'll be returning soon. And now somehow Julian avoids all the scrutiny of Parliament and the media. She has to be off to the Chathams for some work.
Okay, I mean, look, she's paid the price. She's been sent to
you do that. No, she's got paid no price. She'll be back in Parliament. She'll keep her spokespeople's roles. What price is she paid? Yeah.
Muriel, it just makes me wonder whether women in particular are suited to politics.
Well, I think that might be dangerous ground, Sean. Look, I think the point that Maurice makes is a good one, that it's all about standards in Parliament. And,
Correct.
You know, he can probably attest to this. It's been all slipping, you know, for a number of years. I mean, this business of wearing hats in Parliament and so on, I just think it's wrong. And I think they should go back to having very strong standards. When somebody crosses that line, they're off to the Privileges Committee or thrown out of the House or whatever it is. But there has to be sanctions. You have to uphold those standards.
All right.
Sean, I was in Parliament 30 years. I was a pretty bloody robust debater who used to get into some pretty strong, you know, fights. I only got thrown out of Parliament once in 30 years. Once. And that was because I wore a tie. Sorry, I didn't wear a tie on Wellington's Tieless Day. I went down to the Rotary Club to speak at lunch. They told me, take your tie off, you idiot. It's Tieless Day in Wellington. I took it off, finished my lunch, got back to the House. I had question 1 on the day. And Robin Gray was in the chair, our Speaker, Sir Robin Gray. Jonathan Hunt took a point of order. The Minister of Transport's not wearing a tie, and I got kicked out of Parliament for it. So there should be some standards. I got kicked out because my tie was still down at the Rotary Club in downtown Wellington. But, you know, that's 30 years once. But the behaviour now literally looks like there's people wearing sort of pink hats and it's almost like a drama bloody class going on there. And I saw people the other day wandering around wearing sneakers.
Yeah, but look, I tell you what, you're all upset about Julianne Genter, and we have a Maori Party MP stand up in the general debate last week and accuse the government of having a deliberate policy of exterminating Maori.
Yeah.
Accuses the Minister of Kāinga Ora of wanting to keep Maori in servitude and practising white supremacy.
Yep.
The most remarkable speech I've ever seen.
Yep.
And no one bats an eyelid. And there's no rule to say you cannot talk racist crap like that in Parliament, Muriel. But you can't, woe behold, you wave a piece of paper at someone, but you can call them a racist and essentially accuse them of practising genocide.
Well, somebody should have taken a point of order and they should have asked for an apology, withdrawal and apology.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's probably a part of this whole thing. They didn't want to be accused of being racist, like Maurice was saying. And so everyone shuts up. Well, it's not good enough. It's not good enough.
Yeah.
And the real test would be is if someone got up and did a 180 degree on any of whatever that speech says. If it says, you know, that this particular race is supreme and they're wanting to kill this lot and so on. If you were allowed to get up and do the exact opposite and say, you know, whatever, then I'd say fine. But you do a 180 on whatever she was saying and try using those words, you'd be gone from Parliament, you'd be gone from the country almost because it was evil. But she's allowed to do it just with impunity. And it's just that double standard is so annoying that she should have been pulled up on the spot and said, that sort of language has no place in this Parliament.
And as much Free Speech Friday, in fact, the platform is all about free speech. I'll draw to your attention, you guys may not have seen this story, I only became aware of it this morning. A website in New Zealand called Halal Kiwi, initially established so that people of the Muslim faith could find restaurants or suppliers of halal meat, right? Not a bad idea. Fine, if you want to practice that religion, that's good. It is now being used, and the guy who runs it, whose name is Mohammed Solomon, who happens to work at Datacom, he's now using it to post a list of businesses with what he calls Zionist, that means Jewish connections, that he believes should be boycotted. So Halal Kiwi are posting shot, and it is, I called it the 21st century equivalent of painting a Star of David on a shop window in Berlin. What do we do about that, guys?
Well, once again, I think you try doing it one way and you'll just cop the flack like you believe, but they can do it the other way with complete impunity. And it's just well, somehow the woke culture has succeeded in putting everybody back in their little hut to say anything that they don't want, but they can be so extreme in their view the other direction. It makes me laugh. I've said it before on your program. I see all the Greens out these rallies in favour of Gaza, and they've got their black and white tea towels on, and yet half of the Greens who are gay would never be able to go to Gaza because they'd be exterminated within a week of being there.
Yeah. Muriel, are you concerned when you hear about a website in New Zealand doing that?
Yeah, the question is, how do you fight back against this? I think that, you know, the conclusion you reach when you listen to what we've been discussing this morning is that someone has to start, or all of us have got to start standing up to the rubbish that's going on, and it's dangerous stuff, you see. It's not like it's flippant, right? It's very dangerous, and what can happen is there are consequences which can threaten people's lives and so on. So really what should happen is that somebody should be using the law to put in a complaint about that website, because the consequences could be dangerous to the people who've been named. And it's either through the Digital Communications Act or the, criminal law, which doesn't allow people to threaten others in a way that could harm them. And so, this is where maybe the Free Speech Union should be a part of this, acting as a watchdog more generally and launching some of these matters so that the individual doesn't get accused of racism and all the rest of it. The organisation can help in that regard.
Yeah.
But somebody has to stand up to it.
Yeah. Look, guys, we didn't even get to the free lunch thing, so I'm going to ask you very quick, off the cuff comment. Muriel, what was your favourite school lunch when you were a kid?
Fish and chips.
Okay, Maurice.
We're allowed it once a week.
Once a week, on a Friday? You Catholic?
On a Friday, yep.
Yeah. Maurice, your favourite school lunch, components of, go.
Surprisingly, actually the same. I was brought up a very strict Catholic, and I kept asking the priest, why are we not allowed meat on Fridays? And he said, it's God's law. And I said, but why would he make such a law? And he said, I don't know, it's God's law. And then somehow, only 10 years after I finished school, the Catholics abolished that you can't eat meat on a Friday. So God's law changed for some reason. I still can't work out why.
God's allowed to change his mind, Maurice. Absolutely.
I came to the conclusion, I'll tell you what, I've got a market view of it, that all the apostles were fishermen. I reckon they said to the big boy, we can't sell it. How about we put a rule in place?
We want the weekend off. We need to get rid of all our stock on a Friday. Can you help us out here? That's
the reason for the regulation.
I love that, guys. Hey, thank you for a really good session. Good to have you as the inaugural participants in the Free Speech Union supported Free Speech Friday.
Proud.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Muriel Newman and Maurice Williamson there. And don't forget, visit Free Speech Union, FSU.NZ, the champions of free speech in New Zealand, and supporters, and we're grateful supporters of Free Speech Fridays, 8:30 to 9, every Friday with me, Sean Plunket, here on the Information Project on the platform. Okay, we got now to sort of wrap the week. Your calls, your thoughts on things. Mohammed Solomon, feel free to ring in from your job at Datacom while you're hating on Jewish people.